The storm was already brewing when I got home from work that Friday evening. The sky had taken on that strange greenish hue that makes you feel uneasy in your chest, and the wind was howling through the trees like it had something to prove. My name is Rachel Turner, and I live in a quiet suburban neighborhood just outside of Tulsa, Oklahoma. We don't get many extreme storms, but when they come hard and fast, like they're trying to make up for lost time. I parked my car in the garage and hurried inside. The power had already flickered twice, and I just hoped it would hold out long enough for me to heat some dinner and maybe take a hot shower before the storm truly hit. My 16-year-old son, Tyler, was upstairs gaming with his headphones on, completely oblivious to the weather report that had just come through my phone with a deafening emergency alert. It wasn't long before the storm really kicked in. The wind rattled the windows like a drum solo, and rain pelted the roof so loudly it sounded like gravel. I lit a few candles just in case the lights gave out, and I kept glancing out the window every few minutes to check on things. That's when I saw something that made me squint. Across the street, my neighbor, Mr. Douglas, or Doug, as he insisted I call him, was dragging something across his driveway in the pouring rain. Doug was in his early 60s, retired, always wore the same green windbreaker no matter the season, and he mostly kept to himself. We'd shared small talk over the years, neighborly exchanges about lawn care, mail mix-ups, or the occasional package delivery mishap, but nothing personal. He was the kind of guy who'd wave, smile, and go back inside without missing a beat. I never thought much of it. But on that stormy night, Doug's behavior was anything but ordinary. He was dragging what looked like a top-covered bundle across his yard toward his backyard shed. The bundle was large, too large, and the way he was hunching over it, struggling against the wind and rain, made it all the more suspicious. I told myself it was probably just garden equipment or maybe he was moving something before it got damaged, but a strange feeling gnawed at my gut. I tried to shake it off. People do weird things during storms, right? Maybe he was just being cautious. Maybe he remembered something important in the shed that he didn't want to get ruined. But when he looked around quickly before opening the shed door, like he was checking to see if anyone was watching, that's when my instincts kicked in. I picked up my phone and started recording, just in case. I told myself it was probably nothing, but a part of me needed to have proof if it wasn't. Doug finally disappeared into the shed, and I watched for several minutes more. The wind was relentless, and I could feel the vibrations of thunder through the floorboards. About 10 minutes later, the lights flickered again and then went out completely. The house fell into darkness except for the flickering candlelight, and I called up the stairs to Tyler, who came bounding down in pajama pants and a hoodie, holding his phone flashlight out like a torch. "Power's out?" he asked. "Yeah," I replied, handing him one of the emergency lanterns. "Grab the other ones from the hall closet. I'll check the windows again." I found myself drawn back to the front room, eyes scanning Doug's property. The shed door was closed now, the yard empty. No sign of the bundle. No sign of Doug. I told Tyler to stay inside and went to the porch, shielding myself under the awning. The rain had let up slightly, just enough for me to hear a sound from the direction of Doug's shed. It was faint, maybe a scraping or a thud, and it sent a chill down my spine. I decided I was probably overthinking, but I couldn't let it go. I had to know. The next morning, the neighborhood was quiet, eerily so. The storm had passed, leaving behind broken branches, scattered debris, and the usual mess. I saw a few neighbors cleaning up, and I decided to walk over to Doug's house. I wanted to ask if everything was okay, if he needed help with anything. That was the plan, anyway. When he opened the door, he looked exhausted. His clothes were damp like he hadn't changed since the storm, and there was dirt under his nails. "Morning," I said, trying to sound casual. "Crazy night, huh?" He nodded. "Yeah. Lost power for a bit. Nothing too bad." "Yeah, same here. I saw you out in the storm last night. Looked like you were moving something." He blinked at me for a long moment, and then his expression shifted, not angry, not guilty exactly, but something in between. Like he was deciding whether to tell me something. "I had to move my dog," he finally said. "She's old. She panicked during the thunder and got stuck in the crawl space under the porch. I had to pull her out and move her to the shed where it was quieter. I hadn't even known he had a dog." Oh, I said, trying to keep my tone light. I hope she's okay. She didn't make it, he replied, eyes steady. She passed sometime early this morning. I buried her in the back. That hit me like a punch. The sadness in his voice was real. I'm so sorry, Doug. I didn't know you had a dog. Didn't talk about her much. She was old. 15. Name was Pepper. And just like that, all my suspicion dissolved. He wasn't hiding something sinister, he was grieving. He tried to protect her during the storm, and when she passed, he buried her with quiet dignity. I felt ashamed for jumping to conclusions. Later that week, I baked him a small banana bread loaf and brought it over. We talked for almost an hour on his porch. He told me about how he'd adopted Pepper when his wife was still alive, how they used to take her camping, how she was the last living connection he had to those years. That night, Tyler asked me why I had been watching Doug so closely. I told him the truth, that sometimes people act strangely for reasons we can't see right away, and that fear can make us imagine the worst. A week passed. The neighborhood settled back into its usual rhythm. Then something truly shocking happened. One evening, Doug knocked on my door, holding a manila envelope. Thought you should see this, he said. I opened the envelope and found several old photographs. In each one, a younger Doug stood smiling with his wife and a young boy, not his own son, but his sister's. The photos were dated over 30 years ago. That boy, he said, tapping the photo. That's my nephew, Kevin. He went missing during a hiking trip in '91. Body was never found. I looked at him, confused. Last week, after the storm, I went back into the shed to fix the roof. I found something under the floorboards. A rusted old metal box. Inside were Kevin's compass, his ID bracelet, and a photo he took with me before the trip. I'd forgotten I even had it. My breath caught. I thought he'd wandered off, Doug said quietly. But now, I think he made it here, somehow. Maybe someone brought him. I called the authorities. They're reopening the case. The storm had stirred up more than wind and rain. It had shaken loose a piece of history, a memory buried so deep that even Doug hadn't known it was there. That bundle he dragged. It was Pepper, but it was also the catalyst for him revisiting the past, digging deeper, literally and emotionally, into places he hadn't touched in years. The storm brought tragedy, but it also brought clarity. I never expected a wild Oklahoma night to uncover a decades-old mystery. But I learned something important: never assume the